He's been working in the industry for 15 years. And he's been given increasing responsibility from his boss to do all these kinds of data things. But over the course of that entire 15 years, he never got promoted once. And I thought that was an incredibly unfortunate and really sad thing to hear, because he's working incredibly hard. He knows his craft, but because communication and presentation hasn't been his strong suit, he didn't get the opportunities that he wanted. So presentation is an incredibly important skill for any analyst in the field.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to this podcast. Today I'm with Christopher Chin. He's a public speaking coach for tech professionals. And today we'll discuss why presentation skills are important for data professionals and for tech professionals as a whole. Chris, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Dobrin. I'm very excited to talk about this topic today. And as for my background, I started out actually in a completely different field in music composition. So my mind is very much wired for creativity and trying to think out of the box, trying to think about the audience experience. And I transitioned out of that field into data. And I worked for the majority of my career within the data industry in a senior data visualization engineer position and later on business intelligence. I realized, though, over the course of that time in the industry, that communication and presentation, so the quote unquote soft skills, are incredibly important within our field, but don't get the emphasis that they deserve. So a lot of the time, there are a lot of professionals, technically proficient, experts within their craft, but when it comes time to present the results of their work, that's where a lot of the problems ensue. And I found that the most impact I could make was by providing coaching, training services for these professionals to help them with their presentation skills so they can get the opportunities that they deserve.
Yes, exactly. This is absolutely true. I have seen it in my already around 4 years journey in data. I have seen that communication skills, written and also oral, are very, very important and underestimated from data practitioners and professionals. So I guess let's dive right into it. I have some questions prepared that I will ask you and we can discuss. So my first one is, how do actually presentation skills add value to a data or tech professional?
Yeah, I get this question a lot when I work with clients, especially aspiring analysts who wish to enter the field. And what I tell them is this: the field is technical, of course. You need to know the technical fundamental skills, SQL, Excel, Tableau, Power BI, some visualization tool to get into the field. But if you want to actually get the job after the interview, if you actually want to rise in the ranks in your organization, you need to have presentation skills, the ability to present your work. And I think a good example of this would be someone I worked with in a previous organization. And he was a phenomenal data engineer. Everything he touched was gold. I would refer him, if we ever had a problem, I would say, this guy is the one who could solve this problem, any problem that you present to him. But when it came time to present his work, that's where things became a little more difficult. In meetings with managers and high-level executives, he would present the results of his work, but it would fall on deaf and uninterested ears, because what he presented was a lot of the technical jargon. And what he didn't connect with was the why of the presentation. Why does it matter to the person listening? So for a manager, for example, they don't care about all the technical details about the bugs that he fixed, about the programming language that he used. What they care about is how that helps the organization. So I saw that this was an aspect of his skill set that he struggled with, and he really wanted to get good at it. And what I felt seeing this was that I could really make an impact on people, as I mentioned before, through offering coaching and training to prepare them for those moments when they have to present their work.
Sure, I absolutely agree. Then I want to ask you, what are actually the most important outcomes when it comes to communication skills for data or tech professionals, or when delivering a presentation?
I think that there's a big misconception in the industry and many industries at large when it comes to presentation. A lot of people believe that a presentation is about giving information. So if your boss, for example, goes to you and say, hey, I want you to make a presentation about the project that you did. What most people do is they just start making the slide deck and they put all the information on the slides and then they say, okay, my presentation is done. But what I want to do is debunk that myth, because presentations are not about giving information. They're about inspiring action in your audience. You really need to know who your audience is and hit the pain points that they're experiencing to make an impact. And the most important outcome for any presentation is inspiring action. So think about what your audience is challenged by, what solution you're presenting to them that would be beneficial, and make that clear what action they need to take immediately after the presentation is over so that they can change the organization for the better. So that's what I would highly recommend.
Okay, this is actually the last question on the list that we will get. So
Yeah.
I encourage listeners to stay on our discussion. And at the end, my last question is how to actually induce an action with the presentation. So can we provide some actionable tips for our audience for tech professionals who want to actually improve their speaking? Let's say 2 or 3 tips that you can share that, let's say from tomorrow, they can start implementing them into their daily work in order to see some progress.
Yeah, 2 or 3 tips. The number one tip I would give is to practice every day. So if you take the last programming language you learned, for example, let's say it's Python, you only learn that skill by practicing it probably every day or as often as you could. And any skill that you want to master requires endless hours of practice. Same goes for public speaking. You will never get good at speaking unless you speak. So any chance that you get in your organization, speak. And that may be a meeting. So oftentimes I've worked with people who express a lot of hesitation and anxiety when it comes to speaking up during meetings. They say, oh, I don't know, I feel really disrespectful sometimes speaking up, especially if there are higher level managers in the room. I don't want to go against their opinion and I don't want to put myself out there. But I tell them, no, actually, if you are sharing your opinion and you're being assertive in your approach, not aggressive, but if you're being assertive, being simple, direct, and concise, you will only gain other people's respect by sharing your thoughts. People want to know what you think. And this is also strongly cultural, I found. So in many cultures, this discrepancy between speaking in a meeting and feel that feeling that you're being disrespectful is very culturally based. But what I encourage is in a lot of the organizations that we typically work in, that ability to speak and that ability to present your ideas is incredibly important for getting your ideas out, letting people know that you care, and making your thoughts heard. So I would recommend speaking. I would also recommend the tip that most people don't like is I would recommend recording yourself. So that's the only way to really understand how you present to other people. You'll see all the ways that you use your body language. You'll see the way that you use your face. You'll see the way that you use filler words, so awkward pauses. You'll see all the moments where you do that if you record yourself and you say, okay, let me repeat that. Let me do it better again. So I would highly recommend that people record themselves, even if it's the first time, and just repeatedly record yourself until you get a version that you're happy with.
Okay. Actually, going back to the point that you mentioned, the first one, being hesitant to speak, I have seen examples in my professional life where actually upper management or executive people think about a certain tech person is not motivated enough or is lacking just because they hesitate to speak. They might not be. They might be a very good professional who strives to do their best, but because they are afraid or hesitant to speak, they give out the wrong impression. So speaking of that, can you tell us what are the common pitfalls when giving presentation or when people are trying to engage in public speaking of some sort?
I think especially in our technical field, one of the major pitfalls is using too much technical jargon and forgetting the level of technical proficiency in your audience. So if, for example, you're talking to a manager and they're a non-technical person, they don't understand all of the things that you do day to day, but they understand the results of your work. What you need to do when you present to them is you need to speak the same language as them. So don't speak the technical language you may with your fellow developers. Speak the language of the business when it comes to talking to the business. So instead of talking about, for example, if you're a data scientist, you create a model and you have high accuracy, high precision. The non-technical person on the other end listening to that doesn't care about accuracy and precision. They care about if that makes profit, if that makes revenue, if that decreases time, increases efficiency. They care about those things, not the things that you care about. So it really comes down to really understanding what your audience needs to know and tailoring the words that you use to hit upon those things. I also have seen a lot of times, and this goes back to what I mentioned before about the big misunderstanding when it comes to presentation. People believe it's about giving information. And for that reason, they load their slides up with text, all covered in walls of text, and then they just read it word for word often during the presentation because they're giving information. They're giving it in the most direct way by just reading all the words that they put on the slide. But what I really encourage people to do in those situations is think about not just the information that you're giving, but how it's being received. So put yourself in the audience's shoes. Would you in the audience like to watch somebody reading words off of a slide? No, I don't think so. What is really important is you combine information that you want to convey with the experience you want to give to your audience, put them together, and that is in the end what inspires action.
Okay, yeah, I totally agree with what you're saying. But something that I have seen myself and in other people is that usually when you speak in front of a big audience, or even if the audience is small, but they are the executive team of the company, there is a lot of emotions in you. You are nervous, and sometimes, actually pretty often, this could be present. This could be seen from the people that are in the audience. So my question is, what are some tips that you can give for regulating emotions, especially for high stakes meetings or presentations?
Yeah, this is such an important question. And so many people have all the nerves when it comes to a high stakes, especially presentation. And my recommendation is usually three things. So the first is you need to understand that the only thing the audience wants to see is you succeed. The only person that thinks you're not going to succeed is yourself. You are your own worst self-critic. So you're standing on the stage or the podium or in front of the camera, and you're thinking all these thoughts, oh, I'm going to mess up, I'm going to fail, I'm going to do a horrible job. Everybody else in the audience wants you to do a good job. Nobody wants to sit through a presentation that's horrible. That would be a waste of their time, your time, everybody's time. Everybody wants you to succeed. So just think about that. Take in that positive energy from your audience, even if you can't see them, if this is virtual. And the second tip that I would give is that you need to give yourself more grace. So in every presentation that happens, we're always going to mess up something. It's never going to go according to plan. If it does, just go past it. The audience will probably never even notice that you made a mistake. The only person that knows you made a mistake is you. So if you make a mistake, you forgot something you needed to say, the audience will never know that. Just move past it purposefully. So if you start fumbling, if you start freaking out, of course they'll notice that something wrong happened. But if you take every action purposefully, you don't stumble, you're just confident and clear with everything that you do, nobody will care or even notice that something happened off script. And the third tip that I give is to reorient the energy, that anxious energy within yourself. So that anxious energy within yourself is the fight or flight response. So we're confronted with something scary. We're either going to run away or we're going to confront it. If you take the approach of flight, which is wanting to run away, during the entire presentation, you will not want to be there. You want to be anywhere but on that stage or on that podium in front of the camera. You'll want to run away, and that's not good. You're stuck there, but you're wishing you were somewhere else. So a better way to approach it is to take that same energy and think of it in terms of a fight response. Confront the obstacle, confront this challenge of public speaking that you're in, overcome it. And if you think about it that way, then you're on that stage in front of the camera, whatever it may be, and you are happy and confident to be there because you're confronting the issue and you know that you can. So it's just about taking the same base energy, which is just natural. You will feel it every time in any presentation, and just putting it in a more healthy direction.
I think these are two very nice tips, especially the first one. I have actually never thought about it, how actually everyone in the audience wants you to succeed. So when you think about it, it's actually freeing.
Definitely.
When, especially data professionals, but not only, when we give presentations, there are often a lot of numbers. And for some of these numbers, we want our audience to pay attention and to actually remember them. So how should we communicate or present when we have certain facts or data points that we want our audience to remember?
Yeah. And this goes back to what I mentioned before when it comes to reorienting the way you approach presentations. So for technical professionals like ourselves, we think a lot in the how. So how do we get something done? But what the audience cares about is the why. Why does it matter to them? Why does it matter for the business? So it requires flipping the table, flipping the script. So you're thinking about why I'm doing this instead of how I'm doing this. If you think about it that way, then you change your entire approach to presentation. Then from the very outset, you say, okay, Instead of saying, I use this X programming language to fix Y bugs in Z hours, instead at the very beginning of the presentation, you say, this improves sales by 70%, whatever it may be. You directly address the impact. So instead of talking about fact, if you wrap them up into the overarching why, then your audience understands why it's important to them. Another tip that I usually give is to think about not just facts lined up sequentially, but wrap them up in stories. So for example, if I just told you right now my background, I just said to you something like this: I spent my first years as a data journalist fellow and also in the data science realm. After that, I transitioned into data visualization. And then after that, I transitioned into business intelligence. That would be an incredibly boring sequence of facts for you. But if I change that script and I said something like this: I've always been very passionate about data, always very passionate about storytelling. And what I realized is that businesses can really have a lot of impact if they use all the raw data that they have access to and turn them into actionable insights. I discovered that my passion was within this field and I wanted to make an impact by telling stories with data. Now you understand how everything ties together because I told something more like a story. I put myself in the equation instead of just saying fact. So what I recommend people to do is think about more story structure. This is how we naturally converse with each other, with stories. But for some reason, in technical presentations, it's just fact, and nobody cares after a certain point. So I recommend that people use story structure more when they're presenting. Instead of just giving facts, think about creating a narrative arc. So start somewhere, say, this is what's going on in the company right now. Go to some place where you say, this is the big insight that will change how we do things, and then recommend what we do after that. So you create some kind of emotional journey for your audience, and that's what makes your information captivating.
Okay. And this very neatly leads to my last question, which is, let's say we have made our audience remember the facts, remember the details, remember the data point that we want to, or the message that we want to convey. But how we go to the next step, which is how to make them take an action with what we have just told them.
Exactly. And action it's the most important part of the presentation, is what you want them to do afterwards.
Yes.
And in order to inspire and induce action, what you need to do is aggravate the need. So for example, if I were to tell you, I'll use a mattress example, for example. If I said to you, this mattress will improve your sleep, you should buy it now for $999. I highly doubt anybody would actually buy that mattress because you have not aggravated the need. They don't understand why they should get it, except they've only heard the benefit. What you need to do is aggravate the need in the sense that you tell them what the loss would be if they didn't accept your solution. So instead of what I said before, imagine this. This is a typical marketing technique. You would say, you're tossing and turning at night, you have tons of pain when you're sleeping, you can't get a restful night of sleep, and you're groggy during the next day at work. Our mattresses can improve your sleep. Buy this one for $999. So if you use that kind of structure where you're saying, this is why it's really important you adopt our solution, because if you don't, these are the drawbacks. That will make people convinced to take the action that you want because they understand what would happen if they don't. So it's really important to think not just in that technical sense that we're used to, but also in that more marketing and sales sense. How do I inspire and persuade people to do what I want? And it's really that kind of narrative arc that I was mentioning before.
That's a very, very good tip. Actually looking at our stakeholders as people that we actually need to sell our idea to, or our insights, or our findings to. So Chris, thank you very much for these insights and these tips. They were actually very interesting and useful. I think they will be very useful for me, and I guess for my audience. How can people find you? I guess on LinkedIn, we'll put the link down below. Any other place? You have a website, The Hidden Speaker.
Right, exactly. So yeah, I have my LinkedIn profile, and I also have my website, thehiddenspeaker.com, where I have a lot of free resources when it comes to speaking, data presentation, data storytelling. So yeah, feel free to check those resources out. And thanks again, Dobrin, for having me on. It was a pleasure.
Thank you.